Good morning and welcome to Deep 404. There's a couple of big pieces of news to talk about today. One, reportedly Joe Biden has announced to President Zelensky of Ukraine that ATACMS missiles will be sent. No details given yet on the date. Reportedly, he has said that a small number of them will be sent. And then the other big news, and I'll just show a little bit of video of this, is that the Ukrainians have launched attack overnight on the Black Sea Fleet headquarters in Sevastopol. The Russian Ministry of Defense reports that a number of Storm Shadow missiles were shot down. However, at least one, it looks like perhaps two, struck the headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet. Just have a look here, if we can, on our screen. Oh, give us one moment. Technical issues. I can come back to that in a second if we don't get the picture that we're after. The attack apparently has led to the injury of 6 people. There were early reports that there may have been a death, but that has now been walked back. So it seems as though 6 people were injured during this attack. Let's just see if we can have a look here now. Right, there you go. Hopefully you can see that. So there we see what appears to be a second missile coming in after what looks to be already at least 1 or perhaps 2 previous strikes. Now I can't confirm if there were a number of strikes, although it certainly appears as though smoke was rising before what is clearly another missile comes in and strikes the building. So I would suggest 2, perhaps 3 Storm Shadows have got through and hit that building. The attack was carried out in the port of Sevastopol, and there is reports that a Boeing P-8A Poseidon reconnaissance drone has been airborne prior to the attack over the Black Sea and remained there for some time after the attack occurred, and it is thought that it was involved in coordinating the attacks on the Black Sea Fleet headquarters. So, yeah, it's an interesting escalation in some of the the Russian Telegram channels this morning. There are some calls now to see intensified Russian strikes upon command and control centers of the Ukrainians. If you recall, some time ago, Sergei Shoigu, the Russian Minister of Defense, came out and said that if the Ukrainians start to use foreign cruise missiles, like the British Storm Shadow and the French Scalp, or the German Taurus, or the American ATACMS, which I'll come to in a moment, if they start to use those on Russian locations, that the Russians would treat those as being attacks by those nations. Now, when the first Storm Shadow attacks occurred, there were some strikes just after that on Ukrainian command and control centers, and reportedly in some of those centers there were NATO advisors operating in there. There were some reports there may have been some British military advisors in one of the attacks there. No confirmation came out about that from NATO or the West. But one would expect that the Russians are likely to treat this as some sort of an escalation, and that we would expect to see some level of reprisals for these attacks. Particularly now, as the other news that is being announced today is that the ATACMS are going to come to Ukraine. Now, as I said, reporting is that American President Joe Biden has said this to Ukrainian President Zelensky. He's not provided confirmation of how many of the ATACMS will be made available to the Ukrainians. He's not made clear when they will be deployed. The ATACMS has a range of about 300 kilometres, so it makes it useful, puts it into the same sort of range as the Storm Shadow and the Scalp. However, and they are useful. They are useful because they can do things like this. They can get behind the front lines. The Ukrainians can use these, in theory, to disrupt Russian supply lines, to get deep into ammunition stores behind the lines, Russian command and control centres, this sort of thing, like we've seen today with the attack on the Black Sea Fleet headquarters. However, reportedly, the versions of the the versions of the ATACMS that are being provided will only have cluster munition warheads on them. They won't be receiving the high explosive warheads. This is in part because of exactly what's happened today with this Black Sea Fleet and with the calls for now for harder reprisals from the Russians. The Americans believe that if they provide ATACMS and they are used by the Ukrainians in this way, or even more in a more alarming way for the Americans, if they were used to be somehow trying to fire them towards Moscow, then the Russians would see that as a serious escalation and their attacks upon Ukraine would increase. The increase, I guess, would be in things like moving into areas that would impact civilians more likely. Not in terms of direct hits, but as we've talked about before, perhaps moving towards the energy infrastructure, which will have a larger impact upon the Ukrainian population rather than just the military if electricity is taken out to the country. Things like attacking the hydroelectric water dams, power generation plants in Ukraine, that type of thing. Again, I don't think Russia really wants to do this, at least not in the eastern areas where they are likely to retain control of that land, but perhaps in the west of Ukraine. They would, or they will, I'm sure, be certain of where some of the Ukrainian command and control centres are already and haven't been attacking them forcibly or targetedly yet, but that may change and we may see strikes upon those. But yes, I say they're coming with cluster warhead capabilities and not the high explosives. This will be, again, part of the American desire to be seen to support Ukraine with these ATACMS missiles, but not be poking the bear and escalating with Russia. Anyhow, we'll see what happens if they do arrive, what happens there. Part of, I think, what this announcement, or this soft announcement that yes, they're coming, but we're not telling you how many, we're not telling you when, is Biden trying to cover for his present challenges, the likelihood of impeachment going ahead. McCarthy, the head of the Speaker of the House, has announced that, indicated that, impeachment proceedings are likely to proceed. Hunter Biden, whose laptop now has become revealed as being true, is under gun violation charges in the States. Now, I'm not familiar with the particular laws that he's apparently violated in terms of guns in America, but my understanding is that at this stage it looks as though he is in trouble with them and is likely to be facing jail time. Reportedly, he has been trying to obfuscate this by announcing lawsuits on all sorts of people. Alexander Mercouris of the Duran, who has a legal background, commented that one of the suits that Hunter is bringing is against the laptop repairman who he gave his laptop to. He's now claiming that the laptop repairman had no ability or no right to share the data on that laptop. However, at the same time, Hunter is claiming that the laptop's not his. So it's a very strange case there. But yeah, so perhaps the ATACMS announcements may be just part of that smoke screen to try and keep the general American public thinking, oh, good, we're still supporting, yes, our ATACMS are going, good work, President Biden, and take their mind off the fact that he's about to be impeached. Moving just on to a little bit of an update on Nagorno-Karabakh, in Azerbaijan, the area or the enclave that is populated primarily by ethnic Armenians. There have been reports, so basically the decisions around the conflict seem to have happened. It looks as though Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan of Armenia has cut Nagorno-Karabakh loose by recognising that Azerbaijan had controlled the area and have sovereignty over that land. The Azerbaijan army has forced the Armenian military within, not directly Armenian, but the Nagorno-Karabakh separatists, Armenians within the region to surrender and completely disarm. There are reportedly protests underway in Yerevan, the capital of Armenia, with both Russian and Western backing people protesting the Prime Minister, asking for his head, believing that he has betrayed those people in Nagorno-Karabakh. The thing to watch here now is how the Azerbaijan military conduct themselves as they undertake what their president, Ilham Aliyev, has called the need to integrate the ethnic Armenians in the Nagorno-Karabakh area into Azerbaijan. Based upon reporting of what happened in the 2020 war and some unconfirmed video that I've seen today, which I can't corroborate, but which reportedly was indicating some Azerbaijani military forces shooting at the homes of some of the ethnic Armenians in the area. Nikol Pashinyan, the Armenian Prime Minister, has requested that UN observers be brought into the area to make sure that there isn't any form of genocide or ethnic cleansing. Most commentators who know more about the situation than I do are suggesting that the bulk of those ethnic Armenians will leave the area, will return to Armenia, or will move elsewhere, but are unlikely to stay there. They believe the conditions for them will not be favourable if they were to stay there. Anyhow, that's the update there. Now I'll just quickly get through to the battle update on the in the Ukrainian. So change the host. Okay, let's go to the battlefield update. We'll go to the map here. In the last 24 hours, the Russian Ministry of Defense is reporting the following activity. Starting in the Krasny Liman area, on our map here, this is the area up in the northern areas of fighting in Ukraine. The center group of forces are utilizing helicopter strikes and artillery repelled 2 attacks launched by assault detachments of the 12th Special Forces and 5th Territorial Defense Brigades of the Ukrainian Armed Forces close to Grigorovka in the Donetsk People's Republic and the Severodvyansky forestry area. Up to 30 Ukrainian personnel, 3 armoured fighting vehicles, 2 pickup trucks and 2 D-30 howitzers were destroyed. Moving down to the that was the Krasny Liman area, and moving up to the Kupiansk direction. Krasny Liman is at the bottom of this area here, indicated by this red line. Kupiansk at the top. In the Kupiansk direction, the Zapad group of forces, supported by aircraft and artillery, inflicted fire damage on the enemy near Artyomovka and Lugansk People's Republic and Sinkovka, Berestoye and Ivanovka. Sinkovka is the top here, right near Kupiansk. Heavy fighting has been going on there for a month now in an attempt to secure access to Kupiansk itself. Enemy losses were up to 20 Ukrainian troops, 2 German-made Leopard tanks, and 3 motor vehicles. In counter-battery warfare, the Russian troops hit 1 Polish-made Krab self-propelled artillery system, 1 German-made Panzerhaubitze 2000 self-propelled howitzer, 2 M-Star-B howitzers, 1 D-30 gun, and a Rapira anti-tank gun. We haven't heard expressly called out German Leopards for some time, but in the Kupiansk region yesterday, apparently 2 have been reportedly destroyed. Also in this area, a low number of troop losses, but a heavy number of artillery losses here, with a Krab, a Panzerhaubitze, 2 M-Star howitzers, 1 D-30 and a Rapira, 6 pieces at least there, just reportedly destroyed. Moreover, in the Kupiansk direction, an ammunition depot of the 113th Territorial Defence Brigade was neutralised close to Liptsky. Now, moving our map, in the Donetsk region. So here our Donetsk region, going from Bakhmut down to Donetsk. The Yug group of forces, in close cooperation with aviation and artillery, repelled 4 attacks launched by AFU assault groups near Vodyanoy and Marinka. There's been heavy fighting at Marinka for months now. The enemy's casualties were up to 200 Ukrainian troops killed and injured, 2 infantry fighting vehicles and 3 motor vehicles. In addition, in counter-battery warfare, 1 US-made M777 artillery howitzer, 1 Giant-Sint-B gun, as well as 1 US-made AN-TPQ-36 counter-battery radar station was neutralised. Moving to the South Donetsk area, which is this area highlighted in yellow. In South Donetsk direction, units of the Vostok group of forces, airstrikes and artillery fire delivered fire damage against clusters of AFU, Armed Forces of Ukraine, manpower and hardware near Staromayorsk, Novodonetsk and Priyutne. There is some video footage reportedly today being from a Russian close support fighter jet using its cannons directly on a ground target and using its rockets directly on a ground target. This is different to the tactics they've been employing previously, where due to the threat of Ukrainian air defences, they have not been making direct rocket attacks, and they've certainly not been using their cannons on ground targets and getting in that close. Instead, they've been sort of flying in very low and then pulling up, firing their rockets and sort of taking off out of there to avoid being hit by surface-to-air missiles, man-pads, that type of thing in air defence. If this video is correct, and I can't corroborate that it is recent, but if it is, then at least somewhere along the front line here, it appears as though the Russians are becoming confident enough that they're able to now attack in traditional tactics, using traditional tactics, and are not concerned about reprisals coming from the Ukrainians. So it'd be interesting to see if we get more footage like that. If it does, that's certainly indicating that in some areas the air defence capabilities of the Ukrainians is being depleted significantly. In the South Donetsk region, the Ministry of Defence reporting goes on to state that up to 110 Ukrainian personnel, 2 armoured fighting vehicles and 3 pickup trucks were eliminated. An ammunition depot of the AFU 1st Tank Brigade has been hit close to Zelensky. In South Donetsk here, now interesting reporting, nothing about the artillery battles in this area and no reports of artillery being struck. So some interesting reporting coming out today. Up north in Kupiansk, very heavy attrition of the Ukrainian artillery reported and low servicemen numbers. In South Donetsk, no reports today of ammunition, which is unusual for this area. Moving now to the Zaporozhye region. Zaporozhye, I keep twisting my map here. Zaporozhye area highlighted kind of in green here. In Zaporozhye direction, the Russian group of forces in airstrikes and artillery fire defeated a cluster of manpower and hardware of the enemy near Rapatino and Verbove. Up to 20 Ukrainian personnel, 2 armoured fighting vehicles and 2 motor vehicles were eliminated. In counter-battery warfare, the Russian troops hit 1 US-made M777 artillery system, 1 Gvozdika self-propelled artillery system, and 3 D-30 howitzers. So here, again, in Zaporozhye, very low reported numbers of servicemen lost, but still seeing some artillery attrition by the Russians. In the last couple of days, it does feel as though there is a pause or a regrouping by the Ukrainians on the front line, particularly along the southern areas of the Zaporozhye region in Donetsk. Now, there has been very, very heavy fighting there. We've seen numbers reportedly of 200, 240, 280, 300 troops lost in the Donetsk area in a single day. Today, in the South Donetsk area, the numbers were 110. So it almost seems as though along the front line, on the very south in the Kherson region and the very north in the Kupiansk area, there is an uptick in activity. But through the centre, it appears as though for whatever reason, the Ukrainians are slowing down. Now, Seymour Hersh, the American investigative reporter, he has been quoted coming out as saying his sources. Now, Seymour Hersh always protects his sources, so people criticise him for this, although often his reporting is correct. He is saying that effectively the war is over and Russia has won, and that the Ukrainian forces, the offensive needed to stop because the Ukrainian forces would have mutinied had it not stopped at this stage. They're so depleted. Who knows? You know, there are certainly indications that the morale in Ukraine is getting very low and that their fighting is going to become even tougher as we proceed through the Rapatista, through the wet season, and then into the winter, with the Russian forces growing, the Russian mobilization by stealth, providing them with plenty of volunteers, while Ukraine struggles to find people to fight. Okay, that's it. I think I'll leave it there for today. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Well, that was a bit